You're looking at Ashbridges Bay, where Toronto paramedics responded to a drowning call today. This photo was sent to us by a viewer showing lifeguards and emergency crews helping the patient across the beach. EMS received that call just after 2 this afternoon. When they got there, a man was found unconscious. He was taken to the hospital in life-threatening condition. So the importance of life-saving resources at the beach were on full display today. But as we wade into summer, the Life Saving Society is raising concerns when it comes to distracted lifeguards. They've heard from people who say that city beaches and pools, they're sometimes seeing lifeguards there watching their phones instead of the swimmers. Let's go live now to Ali Chiasson, who is at Woodbine Beach. And Ali, let's walk through the rules when it comes to lifeguards and phones.
So, Chris, lifeguards are not supposed to have their cell phones on them. They're supposed to be kept away from their post, and that's to resist temptation. Now, we're not saying this is a widespread issue, but the Life Saving Society says it is worth reminding. Do you think lifeguards should have their cell phones on them?
No, because they're going to be distracted for the people in the water.
I know if I use my cell phone, I'm distracted. Any forms of electronics is a distraction. I mean, it could be just a split second, like my son's right there, actually. And I could be sitting here looking at my phone, and in 2 minutes, or even seconds, in 10 seconds, it could be in the water. And
it doesn't take long for something to go wrong in the water.
So the lifeguards are trained to scan and look for people in distress.
But what if they're looking through their phone? Some parents at the beach today said it's something they think about.
There are teenagers that are doing the lifeguards, so yeah.
Perry Smith is with the Life Saving Society, which offers water safety and lifeguard training courses.
We've had some complaints in the past about lifeguards who are distracted, some of them reading books, some of them listening to their music and have earphones in, some of them actually watching their phones, and of course that's not acceptable.
It is something the city keeps an eye on.
Our policy is that all personal electronic devices are to be put away while at work, and that staff may use them during break when they're not working. So they typically leave it with their personal belongings in their staff room, and they're not allowed to use it. I wouldn't say it's a problem. It's certainly, we recognize that access to cell phone and smart technology is quite popular among young staff, and so we proactively have developed policies and procedures that address that.
If you happen to spot a lifeguard who's keeping an eye on their phone and not the water, there is something you can do.
Certainly they can go to another lifeguard, an adjacent lifeguard, and bring it to their attention, or in some cases there will be a head guard.
So being a lifeguard on a beach poses its own challenges. I mean, we've all seen it before. On a really nice warm day, there can be hundreds of people in the water to watch over. And if something goes wrong, they need to be able to call 911. So between all of the lifeguards on a beach, there is at least one city-issued cell phone that they can use to do just that. I'll send it back to you, Chris.
All right, thanks for this tonight, Ali. The entire board of the Brant County Children's Aid Society just outside of Hamilton has resigned tonight. They say provincial government cuts were making it impossible to do their jobs. The government is blaming the situation on mismanagement. So now with the board gone, Lorenda Redekop has the details on what happens next.
Dozens of people took to the streets of Brantford in support of the 11 volunteer board members from Brant Child and Family Services who all resigned. Staff here blame government cuts.
The cuts need to stop. Cuts hurt kids, and we know that the services that we provide are what keeps kids safe.
The Children's Aid Society has run a deficit for years. The provincial government cut children's aid funding across the province, arguing the number of children in care is down. Brant is a region that's suffering due to the opioid crisis. Children's aid workers say the problems they're dealing with are complex.
When is the last time that any of you were called to a home to support a child and youth after an in-home overdose by their parent? People are dying in this community. What more evidence do you need?
Todd Smith, the Ontario government minister responsible, says he gave the board 10 days to bring in budget cuts, but they refused and instead resigned. The government has appointed a supervisor, Bernadette Gallagher, who heads the Children's Aid Society of Haldimand and Norfolk.
We have willing partners in all of the other children's aid societies across the province except for one right now, and that's why we'll be appointing a supervisor. She's going to be going into Brant. She's going to make sure that we get that CAS back on track.
The union representing workers worries this could lead to a larger problem.
This is the thin end of the wedge. There's 18 agencies just like this one who are also in deficits in the province of Ontario. We have a problematic funding model that must be fixed. Vulnerable children and families need supports in our communities, and the government must fund those supports.
The government says it's confident children and families will continue to receive the services they need. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Yet another PC government appointee has resigned. It comes after the NDP revealed today Naida, who was appointed to the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board last year, has connections to the Premier's former Chief of Staff, Dean French.
Did the fact that he had connections to Mr. French and Mr. Ford, did that in any way color his appointment to the WSIB? And unfortunately, we have no opportunity to ask him those questions because there has been no public opportunity, there has been no committee opportunity, and because the government and Mr. Ford continue to try to do this inside in his own office, and of course, really badly.
Naida and French were found to have coached a girls' basketball team together in Etobicoke in 2013. Naida is the fifth government appointment to sever ties with the government after it was revealed they had personal ties to French. In response, the Premier's office says that an internal review is underway for all other pending appointments. A suicide bomb attack at a hotel in southern Somalia has left at least 10 people dead, one of them a Canadian. Mogadishu-based Radio Dalsan tells CBC News Hodan Nalea, a Somali-Canadian journalist who once lived in Vaughan, was killed. She's seen here in an interview on Metro Morning from 2017. Global Affairs Canada has yet to confirm Nalea's death. The armed group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack in the port city of Kismayo. The group says they targeted the hotel with a suicide car bomb and then sent in armed fighters. Legislators and local elders were inside discussing an upcoming local election. Al-Shabaab had been driven out of the city in the past, but still controls part of the region outside the city. And back here at home, Canadian singer Jacob Hogard will stand trial before a jury. The Headley frontman is charged with 2 counts of sexual assault causing bodily harm and 1 count of sexual interference. The singer has pleaded not guilty to the charges. 35-year-old Hogard was arrested and charged last summer. Police say the charges relate to 3 separate incidents involving a woman and a girl under the age of 16. Those incidents allegedly occurred in Toronto in 2016. A man is now facing charges in connection with the quadrupled stabbing during the Raptors parade. Earlier, police had released these images of the suspect in the June 17th incident. Investigators say during the massive celebration in the wake of the Raptors' NBA Finals win, a man approached and then stabbed a group of men in Yonge Dundas Square. 29-year-old Michael O'Neill Donalds of Richmond Hill is facing a number of charges, including aggravated assault and possession of a weapon. We now know the cause of the fire that hit 650 Parliament Street earlier this week, the second fire at the building in under a year. Officials say Wednesday's fire on the 15th floor started from a stovetop burner. Fire officials say in the scramble to evacuate the building during the electrical fire last August, the burner must have been left in the on position. Wednesday, crews were in the building re-energizing and testing the building's electrical system, and that's when materials left on the stove ignited. More than 1,500 residents are still displaced from last year's fire. The displacement at 650 Parliament is just the latest challenge facing St. Jamestown. Hundreds of residents say they've been neglected for years, and now they're pushing for a special designation that could bring in more funding for local services. City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly shows us why advocates say the low-income area needs it so badly.
St. Good to see you. How are you? Do you know about this petition that we're signing to designate North St. Jamestown a neighborhood improvement area?
Rob Johannes collected signatures from the neighborhood's residents over the last few months, and roughly 700 of them shared a similar sentiment.
So we could actually start new community development initiatives.
Because, you know, need government support, right?
Absolutely.
City support has been around in recent years as the community endured multiple high-rise fires that left hundreds of people displaced. But some say it doesn't address day-to-day issues in the mostly low-income neighborhood.
When things do happen, the community often finds they're mobilizing and looking after themselves before the city comes to get involved.
Didn't you go to outreach today? Longtime community members say there's an array of challenges leading people to resource centers like this in the heart of St. Jamestown.
There's a lot of, in regards to mental health and addiction, as well as housing is a big crisis.
It's getting more expensive to live here. People can't afford to eat. There's one food bank in the neighborhood.
The hundreds backing the petition now want staff to reassess the neighborhood, which didn't make the cut for priority funding in the city's 2014 assessment.
Just sign your name and put your address there.
The local councillor says it's because it was lumped in with an affluent neighborhood to the south.
I believe those are the numbers that sort of skewed the St. Jamestown evaluation, and we missed the mark by literally 5%.
5 years later, in the wake of headline-making incidents, there's new hope city staff will give the area a second look and a long-awaited boost in investment.
It's a very, very eclectic and diverse community, but at the same time, maybe not quite as a direct result of that, it can often be a highly overlooked and highly neglected community as well.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
A state of emergency is in effect as Tropical Storm Barry makes its way closer to the Gulf Coast of Louisiana. Winds are intensifying in strength, and the mayor of New Orleans has warned residents to take precautions.
Prepare for heavy rain, slow moving. Still, this is what we're being told. So this means staying over us for a while with consistent rainfall. So we're looking at the heaviest rains happening tomorrow. This again could have high impact on the city of New Orleans.
Forecasters say the storm could drop up to ½ meter of rain across Louisiana, including, of course, New Orleans and Baton Rouge, as well as southwestern Mississippi. The National Guard and rescue workers are being posted around the state with boats, high-water vehicles, and helicopters. Let's get right to NBC's Jay Gray, who is in New Orleans tonight. Jay, we're talking about a triple threat from this storm. Wind, rain, and storm surge piled on top of already swollen waterways. Walk us through why officials are so concerned tonight.
Well, a couple of reasons, Chris, and it's been off and on rain today. We're getting a bit of a break right now, just a spitting rain at this point. But I want to show you the Mississippi River, and it is at flood stage already, has been for a record number 260 days. They've closed all river traffic here, so there's no boats going either way on the river at this point, just too high and too dangerous with this storm moving in. But to show you how much this river has come up, when you look out here and you get to some of these lights that are put up here, you see the tree, that's an area where kids play, where they host small concerts at times, all underwater at this point. A lot of the people that we've talked to say they've never seen the river this high. And then you're going to add to that the effects of Barry, which right now is a tropical storm, but most forecasters believe will be a Category 1 hurricane by the time it makes landfall. The water is going to be the issue. Yeah, we're going to see some winds. We're getting some gusts now, but it's the water that's going to be the biggest problem and could be a problem for a long time. Most of these areas below sea level, they're going to get a pounding, flooding rain for 24 hours or more, and there's just nowhere for that water to go.
Jay, this is an area that sadly knows hurricanes well. New Orleans did build up its flood defenses after the deaths and damage from Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Will those defenses be enough in the face of what you just described?
Look, the Corps of Engineers, Chris, says that yes, that they feel very confident that the water won't overtap the levees and that they believe the defenses are in place. For the first time in the history of the city, all of the storm gates are closed. All of the floodgates have been shut down around the city. They have an intricate system of canals and pumping stations throughout the area to try and move that water out as quickly as they can. 198 of the 200 pumping systems are available and ready to move. The problem is if you get too much water for them to move out, they move out about 1,000 cubic feet of water every second. But once it builds up, it's there. Those things will be working around the clock. They hope that they can get that water out. There is going to be some flooding, and it may be serious in some areas.
All right, well, thanks for this tonight, and you stay safe down there. Let's get right to Nick Cernkovich now. Nick, this storm is happening a long way away, obviously, but we'll feel a bit of its impact right here.
Yeah, and just a little bit, and I want to sort of draw the picture for you. There's a couple things to put this in perspective. As you mentioned earlier, some forecasters are suggesting we could see as much as half a meter of rain. Now, that's more than half of the annual rainfall that Toronto gets. And that's all happening within the span of about 24 to 48 hours. And the reason for this is we've got this high pressure system that's sort of right through the central United States. And what that does is it acts kind of like a wall. It blocks this thing. So as it moves northward, it's actually running up against this. And that's why this system is so slow moving. And that's why it's going to drop a lot of rainfall down there. But because of this, we probably won't see much of the effects of this storm system. It's slowly going to weaken, and as this system slowly makes its way northward by Monday, it begins to kind of fizzle out. Now, there is the sort of westerly flow that sits up over us. This doesn't really get scooped up by it until sort of midweek. So we've got rain showers in the States. We're not going to feel the effects of it, if anything, until about Wednesday, when some of that moisture connects with our sort of westerly flow of air. But if we see it, we're not really going to see it as Tropical Storm Barry. What we're going to see is just a little bit of remnant moisture with this particular storm. Now, transitioning back to today, of course, we've seen generally cloudy skies, although things are pretty clear at this point right now. They're sort of clearing out. Look for clear skies tonight, and of course, some more humidity on the way for tomorrow. We're going to have your full forecast details, including what you can expect for the next 5 days coming up in just a bit.
Sounds good. With the Honda Indy and all the events this weekend, people will want to know what day is better, Saturday or Sunday. We'll check in with you later on.
You bet.
On the heels of the Toronto Raptors' historic NBA win, a group is more determined than ever to get a Toronto team in the Women's Pro League. The WNBA hasn't agreed to the team yet, but the Toronto group is pushing forward with plans to have a team in place for next season. Greg Ross talked to one of the would-be co-founders of that team to find out why they're so confident.
This is something that the league doesn't just need, but it wants.
Daniel Escott says while he and his business partner haven't gotten official approval from the WNBA, they have plenty of support in their bid to bring a team to Toronto. And he says the timing couldn't be better.
Curry lets it fly.
On the heels of a Raptors championship.
The timing was actually accidental. We were planning this, even before the playoffs began. It's time for the WNBA to grow. And Toronto is, I would contend, the best market in North America to do it.
He says they've already started laying the necessary groundwork to have a team up and running next spring.
We have core partners in place. We have a venue ready to go. We have all the dates locked down that we'll be needing the venue.
He wouldn't say which venue they plan to play in, but there are plenty of options, including the Mattamy Center, formerly Maple Leaf Gardens, now home to the Ryerson Rams.
If a WNBA team came, I told my parents, we got to get season tickets. I'd be there as often as I could.
Haley Robertson and Kara Tiemans both play for the Ryerson women's basketball team. They also run basketball camps for young girls.
Basketball camps this summer have skyrocketed. Our numbers are crazy.
And with the possibility of a pro women's team coming to the city, they say those girls would have role models to look up to.
If you got to see someone live, it'd be a really neat experience just seeing that there is a pro path for women if you get to that level.
But there is still work to be done. Escott says they have been in talks with WNBA officials, but are waiting for the league to renew its collective bargaining agreement before submitting an official application.
We'll be submitting the paperwork before the end of the summer. We're meeting with the WNBA a number of times between now and then.
He says they're also working on a short list of team names.
So the two names that have come up the most are the Toronto Huskies, which is obviously a nod back to the original basketball team, and the Toronto Towers after the CN Tower.
If all goes according to plan, they hope to be up and running just in time for the 2020 WNBA season. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, after the break, we delve into the last fatal duel in Toronto, which took place 202 years ago today. So who was involved, who won, and why is it so memorable? We'll tell you all of that coming up next.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
On this day, 202 years ago, a young man was shot and killed in a duel. It would go on to be Toronto's last fatal duel. And the story behind it, well, it's one for the books. Just over 2 centuries ago, on July 12, 1817, Yonge College is where Toronto's last fatal duel took place. On the one side, John Rideout. He's a student working in a law firm. And on the other side, Samuel Peters Jarvis. And boy, did they have bad blood.
who are two of the big founding families of Toronto, both members of the Family Compact, which is the big conservative Tory elite that kind of controlled the city. And they'd been feuding for, by this point, a couple of decades, so that these kids, Samuel and John, had grown up hating each other, even though they were neighbors on Adelaide and went to the same church.
Adam Bunch wrote about the duel in the Toronto Book of the Dead.
A small town, Toronto had just been founded 25 or so years earlier, so the population was still low, it was still very muddy.
So on July 11th, 1817, the two got into a fight on the street, and Rideout challenged Jarvis to a duel. Yeah, that's something they did back then, but it was illegal. So the next morning, the two met here on the northwest corner of Yonge and College, and they brought with them what's called a second. Basically, that's a witness to make sure that everything's done honorably. So here are the rules to make it honorable. The seconds count out 1, 2, 3, fire. Neither party is allowed to raise their pistol until the word fire. But Rideout jumped the gun, shooting on 2. He missed and was now in trouble.
Nobody knew what to do at that point, what the rules and honor dictated. So they had a little huddle and discussed it among themselves and decided that Rideout should go stand in the spot where he'd taken his shot from, so Jarvis could take a free shot at him. They say some people might have missed that shot on purpose, since that might have been the most honorable thing to do.
But he hated John Rideout.
He did. So he took his shot, aimed well, hit him in the shoulder. It cut through his throat, through his jugular and his windpipe. Autopsy declared he must have died just instantaneously. Although that's not the story that Jarvis and the seconds told. They claimed that Rideout had lived just long enough to forgive them all and absolve them all of any legal responsibility, which didn't help Jarvis. He was still arrested and charged with murder. But since duels were seen as the proper thing to do, he ended up getting off scot-free.
The loser of the duel was buried at St. James Cemetery. His grave makes no mention of the duel, only that, quote, a blight came and he was consigned to an early grave.
I'm Natalie Nanowski. No, I'm not in Muskoka. I'm actually in Caledon, in a quarry that has now become a beach. I'll have that story coming up.
Everyone is looking for a spot to cool off in this summer heat, but if you live in Brampton or Caledon, there aren't very many choices. But as now Natalie Nanowski explains, a local quarry may have residents rejoicing.
From Hurontario Street, all you see is piles of sand and dump trucks. But hidden below is blue water in a little sandy area. No one here seems to mind the beach is actually a quarry.
I think any kind of water is great in the summer.
I like the way they've got it done up, and it's user-friendly.
There's kayak rentals, a diving dock in the middle of the water, and plenty of shallow areas to play in.
Those little guys. Are there any frogs?
No.
No, just minnows.
It used to be a spot where triathletes came to train until it opened to the public last year. And on days when it isn't cloudy, the beach is busy.
It's been good for families that come here. They love more private feel.
We're really growing up in Orangeville. We never really had any water close enough, so we'd always have to drive an hour away.
It's $15 a person or $25 for a family. And people don't mind paying once they know there's a cause.
So a lot of the money goes towards funding triathletes, and they're traveling to places all around the world because it's not cheap. So we want to make sure that the people who don't make as much money necessarily have an opportunity to be good of an athlete as someone in a higher end family.
Once you're in it, you almost forget that this is a quarry. The water is really warm and also really clean. The quarry is actually fed from a nearby spring.
Well, it's more clean than a lot of people's well. At the beginning of the year, it's tested and to make sure that, of course, it's safe like any body of water, but it's well above standards.
Best part? It's open 7 days a week. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Caledon.
Environment Canada confirming a storm that overturned trailers at a campground north of Montreal yesterday was a tornado. Witnesses say the EF1 twister moved through the area in just seconds around the supper hour last night. Trees and power lines were downed. Roughly 100,000 Hydro-Quebec customers were without power in the aftermath, but most are back online tonight. There were no reports of serious injuries. Scientists say more of us will continue to feel the effects of climate change. Longer stretches of extreme heat are expected to become the new reality. And researchers at the Montreal Heart Institute want to learn how to help people cope. Alison Northcott takes us inside a special kind of lab they're using to do that research.
So right to the end on the seat.
Yeah, boy.
74-year-old Michelle Dupuis is in the hot seat, a room designed to simulate a dangerous heat wave. Before we get a blood pressure, we wipe the arm to make sure that all the sweat's gone. Researchers are studying some of the people most vulnerable in the heat, older adults with underlying health conditions.
So we're really trying to find simple solutions that anybody could use at home just to stay cool if they don't have access to air conditioning, to minimize the impact of heat waves on individuals' health.
Today, your trial is going to be 38 degrees Celsius, 60% relative humidity. Before heading in, Dupuis was fitted with electrodes and capsules. With his heart and lung conditions, real heat waves are tough to handle.
I feel that it's hard. I don't have as much as energy as I would have.
We'll continue to ask you, how hot do you feel? How comfortable do you feel? We'll take your blood pressure.
We always hear kind of typical guidelines during heat waves. Obviously they make sense and they're intuitive, but surprisingly not a whole lot of them are backed up by scientific data. So we're really trying to bring the science behind what's being recommended.
For instance, by testing the use of fans, wet sponges, or a combination of both.
Relax and enjoy.
Relax and enjoy. Your margaritas are on the way. Dupuis' skin temperature, sweat rate, and heart rate are closely monitored and recorded. Anecdotally, people always tell us that the skin wetting feels amazing, and they always feel more comfortable and a lot more cool when they are using the skin wetting and then the skin wetting with the fan. But from a cardiovascular and a thermal point of view, it's really hard to conclude any findings yet. During Montreal's heat wave last summer, public health officials say 66 people died from the heat. Many of them were over the age of 65. The hope is that public health agencies could use the eventual findings of this study to minimize the risk during future heat waves. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Speaking of extreme heat, we're in for some of that, right, Nick?
Yeah, Chris, don't be fooled by what you had today. It was a little cooler today. In fact, not until later in the day did we hit 24 degrees, and that's where we're sitting right now. But hot and humid weather is on its way back into the GTA, especially for mid next week. So there's a look at current temperatures right now. You factor in the humidity, feels like about, let's say 28 in the city of Toronto right now. So that's not too bad, right? The humidity had dropped yesterday, but we're going to see it increase again starting tomorrow. Now, tonight, look for clear skies, just a little bit of cloud cover pushing out at this point. But as we move through the next 24 hours, we're watching another cold front drape down from the north. As it does, in advance of it, we'll get this southwesterly breeze. So morning sunshine, in addition to this southwesterly breeze, are going to help to bump up the temperatures, but also the humidity as well through the afternoon. This is going to trigger off some scattered thunderstorms across the GTA. And then as we move through the evening, things clear out again, and we're in for some drier, cooler weather for Sunday. That being said, next week, the warm weather, the hot weather rather, and the humid weather comes back once again. Tonight down to 15 degrees under clear skies for basically the entire Golden Horseshoe. Tomorrow, we've got thunderstorms in the forecast, highs to about 29 degrees in the city of Toronto. I put the 40% in there because we will see thunderstorms. It's just you may not see them in your backyard, but we will see them scattered across the GTA. Humidex tomorrow of 35, and then into Sunday, temperature of 26. Looks to be a nice, clear, dry day. Humidex lower as well. So you're asking about the Indy. Sunday probably is the nicer of the days. It's cooler to be outside. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, temperatures continue to rise. But look at this. Tuesday and Wednesday, we've got temperatures in the 30s. We've got humidex values on both days in the 40s. Chris.
Yikes. We'll be ready for that.
You bet.
U.S. President Donald Trump lost another member of his cabinet today. Labor Secretary Alex Acosta resigned amid controversy over his role in the case of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Arthi Pohl has more from Washington.
On the lawn outside the White House, surrounded by reporters, the U.S. president announced his Labor Secretary Alex Acosta submitted his resignation this morning.
He has been a fantastic Secretary of Labor.
The departure comes just 2 days after Acosta fielded questions from reporters at a news conference regarding his role in the investigation of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who was arrested last weekend on new sex trafficking charges. In that news conference, Acosta defended his actions in 2008. Then, Acosta was the U.S. attorney in Miami when he oversaw a non-prosecution agreement with Epstein. It resulted in the multimillionaire avoiding federal charges and serving 13 months in jail after years of abusing young women and girls. Acosta oversaw that 2008 decision, the secret deal which was not shared with victims, as a judge ruled it should have been. The outgoing Labor Secretary says his role in that case has become a distraction.
It would be selfish for me to stay in this position and continue talking about a case that's 12 years old rather than about the amazing economy we have right now. And so I submitted my resignation to the president effective 7 days from today.
Trump says this was entirely Acosta's decision.
There hasn't been an ounce of controversy at the Department of Labor until this came up. And he's doing this not for himself, he's doing this for the administration.
More than 50 members of Trump's administration have either been fired or quit so far during the president's first term. Deputy Labor Secretary Pat Pizzella will temporarily take over Acosta's role. As for Jeffrey Epstein, he is due back in court on Monday. Arthi Pohl, CBC News, Washington.
He's awesome, man. He's one of the best. Definitely the reason we won the Cup.
The Stanley Cup is in the GTA. Blues goaltender Jordan Biddington brought the cup to his hometown today. We'll take you to Richmond Hill for the festivities after the break.
signed it and autographed it.
So what are you going to do with that?
Probably frame it.
The energy of everything here, it's a lot of fun. And you get to see the drivers a lot more close up. When you go to F1 and other courses, you don't. It's sort of like hands off. Whereas these guys, you get to see them and you get to get up close and personal.
Thousands are already being floored as the Honda Indy welcomed fans for free today. To not just see the cars in action, but to meet their favorite drivers as well. Oakville's very own James Hinchcliffe was there signing autographs, getting Indy enthusiasts excited for the big race on Sunday. The Stanley Cup made a trip to the GTA today. St. Louis Blues goalie Jordan Binnington brought the cup to his hometown of Richmond Hill, and that wasn't the only hardware he brought home. Take a look.
We've been super fans the whole time, and we're so proud of you, Jordan. Richmond Hill, cheers!
On the own sound attack, he just got a bunch of different shutouts, and he was such a good goalie that I just loved him and was following him ever since.
Hello, Richmond Hill! This is awesome. I'm so proud of Jordan. You can see that a lot of the people in Richmond Hill are very proud of him, of what he's accomplished as an individual in a very short time in his life. It's unbelievable. We're very, very proud of him.
What's up, everyone? This is incredible. Something I'll always remember, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys. To some people, it may seem, I came out of nowhere, and but that's not the truth. The people behind me know that, and I've been working hard, and I think it's a long process, and life's tough, and stuff's not going to go your way, and it's how you handle it. So I think a message I want to portray is that life is tough, and a lot of times the tough way is the way, and it'll work out in the end, I promise, because this feels really good, and having you guys out here is really special to me. So thank you.
I feel pretty good, getting a key to the city in any city is incredible, but especially my hometown, it means a lot to me, and I'm really excited about it.
He's awesome, man. He's one of the best. Definitely the reason we won the cup.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, great experience. Great to see the cup in our hometown, and this little guy gets to witness it. Was it cool? Yeah, did you like it?
Winning at an auction can look like a sport unto its own, and being the sole owner of a very special shoe, well, that's going to cost you. For the first time ever, Sothebys is auctioning off rare and pricey running shoes. Among them, Nike's original waffle shoes and the self-lacing sneakers from cult classic Back to the Future.
What we've been seeing is the evolution of culture, that it's all starting to evolve and intertwine together. We see fashion, we see art, we see luxury, all playing in the same field. A lot of people probably recognize this sneaker from Back to the Future. So Nike released a very limited set of this, and this is one of the very, very limited ones, because they actually self-lace. So there's a little contraption in the sneaker that senses your foot, and when it feels your foot in there, it automatically tightens. So with something like the Nike Moon shoes that are probably the rarest, potentially rarest sneakers, period. They have a low estimate of $110,000. These were handmade by Bill Bowerman. Bill Bowerman, for those who don't know, is one of the co-founders of Nike, and he was making these sneakers with a waffle iron. In some cases, it's not about wearing the shoes. They view this as works of art, and perhaps they're designed by Tinker Hatfield, or perhaps they were owned by Karl Lagerfeld. And this is a category that has proven that it has real strength and is continuing to grow. So we want to show the best representation of that.
A group of Muslim women are hoping to make history. Today, they unveiled that Regent Park would be the location for Canada's first women's-only mosque.
That's why this is so historic, because, we found finally the community where we're going to be able to land that and actually have a physical space. This is the first in Canada. There's only a few around the world that are considered women's mosques today, so it's a huge piece for us.
So this is the first permanent location since the mosque launched in April. The goal of the mosque is to create a safe space for Muslim and ally women to practice their faith. And the residents of the neighborhood said a space specifically for women is necessary.
Women have our own issues that we could discuss with another women that could feel safe and also being heard and validated the issue that we are going through as well, and not being labeled or stigmatized.
The Women's Mosque of Canada hopes to open its doors in 6 months. They're looking to raise $250,000 for the project. There's a houseboat at the Ontario Place Marina right now that may have caught your attention. Wigwam Chichimong is an art installation and Indigenous interpretive learning center. Indigenous elder Duke Redbird helped make it a reality. He's hoping people of all ages and backgrounds will visit to learn of Indigenous culture. Talia Ricci takes us on a tour.
It's very important that the City of Toronto, the citizens of Toronto understand that at one time this whole territory here was Indigenous. And I think now we have a new generation of people saying, hey, why don't we reintroduce these ideas to the waterfront? So here I am. Please come in. And these are some of the things I have here. Is an elder's staff that was a piece of driftwood, and it was floating in the water. It became my elder's staff, but you can see my hand fits perfect there, where I can hold it like this. And this is done by nature. It wasn't carved, it was just floating in the water.
It was meant for you.
Yes. This is powwow dancers, leaders, staff. And when he powwow dances and he's going around the circle, he can point to anybody who's not dancing and say, come on up and dance. When people come in, they're in the shade and they can sit down and they can talk, they can enjoy the comfort here. There's a lot to be told about the teepee, but originally, these teepees were made from buffalo hide, and what the people did was they put 28 poles around which represented the 28 ribs of a buffalo.
Tell me what some of your favorite moments have been when people have come to visit the boat.
Well, the favorite moments are always when they have that aha in their eyes. I just love it. I'm 80 years old now, and part of our tradition in Indigenous culture is that there's a great medicine wheel of life, and when you're young, you spend the first part of your youth just watching and seeing everything. And when you learn language, then you listen, and then as you grow older, you remember. And then when you get to be my age, you get an opportunity to share. And so that's what I'm doing, is I'm sharing the wisdom that I've acquired and accumulated over 80 years of my life.
And that's just a short bit of Talia's interview with Duke Redbird. You can catch the full thing as Talia is guest hosting our Toronto for Marival Tarouk this weekend.
Teenagers of our age, we can't get out in the world or entrepreneurship and all those because we lack opportunity. I think Hope Blooms brings us an opportunity to produce our best selves out there.
From Nova Scotia to our city. After the break, how a nonprofit group from Halifax is paying it forward in Toronto. A group of Nova Scotia teens is sharing life lessons with young people in this city. They run a successful nonprofit in Halifax. It helped their communities and is putting many of them through university. Now, as Colleen Jones explains, they want to pay it forward.
An early morning flight from Halifax for these Hope Bloom kids.
Excited?
They're off to Toronto to spread what they've learned about building a social enterprise.
We're here today to ask for $10,000 in exchange for 5% royalties until the $10,000.
A little backstory. When these teens were just kids back in 2013, they pitched the Dragons on their homemade salad dressings. It's community-driven, it's kids-driven, and the payback for them is they get their university paid for when they're ready to go. The Dragons bought in.
And the money will come.
The little business has grown from farmers market sales to now this. Historic Maple Leaf Gardens, the site of Loblaw's flagship store. They're launching Hope Bloom's products here. Dragon star Arlene Dickinson shed a few tears on what this has blossomed into.
But they've been able to now pay it forward and be able to help a community in Toronto.
This idea of planting seeds so that you can not just, as we said, grow food, but that you can actually change people's lives.
Selfie time with Arlene. Then time to hit the stage.
Really exciting.
As the Hope Bloom kids talk about what they've built, listening intently, this group from Scatting Court in Toronto. They've been chosen by Hope Blooms as the group they'll mentor.
A lot of times, teenagers of our age, like, we can't get out in the world of like entrepreneurship and all those because we lack opportunity. I think Hope Blooms brings us an opportunity to produce our best selves out there.
Even the mayor of Toronto, John Tory, thought this is a unique marriage.
In Toronto, we have a number of neighborhoods, as is the case in every city in Canada, where people struggle a bit more. They're lower income people. Some of them have had a real struggle in their lives. And again, those are the kids that often need that little bit of extra support and encouragement. This will be a big part of it.
That was the genesis of Hope Blooms when it started in Halifax's North End. It's a neighborhood where public housing meets new condos full of hip shops. It's known troubles in the past, but doesn't want to be defined by that.
Hope Blooms has changed my life, oh my God, in many ways.
Kaladi Baboye is now a second-year St. Yves student with his university paid for by Hope Blooms.
I'm conquering my goals. I'm taking my goals, my achievements, and then taking it back to my community and to people younger than me and mentoring them and showing them you can do it too. Like, I'm not the only person in the world that can do this. Everyone can do this.
So these two groups from different cities but with similar stories met in their community garden in Toronto to start planting the seed on how to change their future by working now in the present. Herman Ellis works at Scatting Court.
A lot of us cried, and we've been in this business for a really long time because it's everything that we've all strived for in our careers, is to have young people take ownership of their communities, take ownership of their lives, and to give back.
Hope Blooms will donate $1 from every sale in Toronto to whatever business plan they come up with, and they'll watch how this seed grows. Colleen Jones, CBC News, Toronto.
Hope Blooms in Standing Court!
Even on Dragon's Den, I don't know if I've ever seen Arlene that emotional.
Emotional about it, yeah.
I like seeing that.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's really invested in the project.
You can see that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were asking about the Indy.
Yes, and the weather is looking pretty nice.
It's looking pretty good, yeah. Now, I'm going to warn you, tomorrow there might be a few spotty showers, but this is not a long-lived event. The bigger thing there, if you're going to be outside, is make sure you stay hydrated. It's going to be hot and it's going to be humid. Sunday, a little cooler, also drier as well.
And when I was talking to James Hinchcliffe yesterday, he was saying how important it is to have that kind of cooler temperature on Sunday when they're racing.
There you go. We're doing it for him.
That's our show for tonight. Have a great night.